When the Supreme Court issued its Citizens United decision back in 2010, many in the media predicted it would usher in a new era of corporate electioneering. And they were right, of course. But they only had half the story. You won't hear it anywhere in the mainstream media. But over the past decade or so, our elected representatives have slowly but surely handed the power to decide our elections over to a very small handful of giant and mostly Republican-connected corporations. And they've done so by giving them the right to collect and count our votes. At one time, counting the votes was something done by people like you and me. It was done by volunteers, political party representatives, government workers. My mom used to do this. If there was anything sketchy with the results, you could compare those results with exit polls conducted by one of many reputable polling companies. The system worked for years, and for good reason, too. Exit polls were, and still are, the gold standard to detect fraud. But something changed, and only in the United States, in the early 2000s. Private corporations armed with fancy new electronic voting machines, not everyday people, began counting the vote. They were helped out by President George W. Bush, who in 2002 signed the so-called HAVA, Help America Vote Act. This bill gave billions of dollars to states all over the country so they could then give that money to giant electronic voting machine corporations. Supporters of electronic voting machines say they're safer and better than manual vote counting. That's just a flat-out lie. Anyone who wants to easily can use a voting machine to swing an election. If you don't believe me, just check out this 2004 video of Howard Dean playing around with a Diebold voting machine while he was guest hosting Tina Brown's CNBC TV show.
This is the official program that the county supervisor sees. As we can see here, Howard Dean has 1,000 votes, and Lex Luthor has 500, so you're beating Lex Luthor. You see we have 800 votes here for you and 400 for Lex Luthor. Let's just flip those. We'll make that 400, and we'll give 100 votes to Tiger. Let's just see what happened here. We'll go back into GEMS the legitimate way. And as you can see now, Howard Dean only has 500 votes. Lex Luthor has 900, and Tiger Woods has 100 votes. We just edited an election. It took us 90 seconds.
It really is that easy. In fact, according to blackboxvoting.org, a nonprofit group dedicated to investigating problems with electronic voting, and rigging an election with an electronic voting machine is so easy a chimpanzee can do it. And if you think this is all just a bunch of hand-wringing, then think again. Because ever since the early 2000s, when the use of electronic voting machines really took off, things in America really got weird. Back in 2002, for example, polling showed popular Georgia Democrat Senator Max Cleland with a solid 5-point lead over his Republican challenger, Saxby Chambliss, less than a week before Election Day. But when the votes were counted using electronic voting machines made and operated by the Diebold Corporation, Chambliss emerged victorious by about 2 points. So what happened? Well, it might have had something to do with a software patch that Diebold installed in machines in Democratic-leaning counties months before voters went to the polls. But we'll never actually know what happened. As Robert F. Kennedy Jr. noted in his piece on the 2002 Georgia Senate race, it is impossible to know whether the machines were rigged to alter the election in Georgia. Diebold's machines provided no paper trail, making a recount impossible. That's the whole problem with electronic voting machines. We'll never really know. Companies like Diebold don't have to reveal their software secrets because they're protected under copyright law. And again, unlike paper ballots, you can't really see when someone messes with your touchscreen vote. It happens outside of plain sight. Ultimately, however, the biggest problem with electronic voting machines is that they violate the core principles of our democratic republic. Whether or not election rigging exists, my bets are that it does, but let's say it doesn't. Still, the whole idea of privatizing our vote is a crime against our form of government. Think of it this way. The whole purpose of government is to administer the commons, things like parks and healthcare and roads and, the stuff we need to survive. And in a democratic republic, voting is the most important part of the commons. It's the most important because it's the glue that holds everything else together. Voting is how we, the people, hold the managers of our commons, that is our elected leaders, how we hold them accountable for their actions. handing the one thing we use to hold everyone else accountable, what Thomas Paine called the heart of democracy, the vote, handing that over to a corporation, a for-profit corporation that is only accountable to its shareholders and counts that vote in secret, is the ultimate crime against democracy. On Tuesday, millions of Americans went to vote for the candidate or ballot question of their choice. But thanks to more than a decade of election privatization, we'll never know whether their votes actually counted. That's a shame. It's time to return to paper ballots that are counted by actual human beings. Ireland and Canada tried out electronic voting machines, eventually abandoned them. Ireland just sold theirs for scrap metal a few months ago. It's time we followed their lead. Privatizing the vote is just absolutely insane. It's time to scrap corporate-controlled electronic voting machines and return our elections to where they belong, in the hands, physically, of we the people.